Hi, Mickey.
Hey, Bob.
How you doing?
Pretty bad.
What's wrong?
Well, I'm worried the Senate will pass the DREAM Act, as you know.
Yes.
That's troublesome.
Which you refer to as the Nightmare Act.
I don't. That's a cliche, Bob. I would never do that. But I think it would be bad. Create an incentive for more illegal immigration. Not a good thing. And that's it. And, you know...
Well, I mean, we'll talk about that later. If it's any consolation, I think, as you probably know, the conventional view is that the Democrats don't actually expect to win the vote, and they're just doing this as a favor to Hispanics. But we'll get that's a tease that will keep people watching.
I'm also I'm a practitioner of a dead art forum blogging. Apparently, Nick Denton has a very smart piece on why he's moving his site Gawker beyond the blog, because blogs are obsolete.
What's he moving it to?
Well, he's moving it sort of in the direction everybody else is moving it, with a lot of video homepages, like curated video, not just lonely guys blogging away one item after another, but everything is sort of become sort of edited and arranged, just like a regular TV station. So he's managed to replicate, a TV station on the web. I don't think that's such a great achievement, but it'll make him a lot of money. Anyway, I'm bitter because blogging is dead. I'm the last
Times are hard, but the good news is that, there's been this merger creating this huge conglomerate, which you'll be part of.
Which merger?
That would be the Newsweek Daily Beast merger.
Yeah, no, it's not like I joined a dying news organization. Oh, wait, I did.
Well, no, but that was the bad news. The good news is that it's being combined with a not dead yet news
well, it's
organization.
not dying anymore because it's being taken over by the Daily Beast, and
which has already shown its ability to make large sums of money.
Up to a point, Lord Copper. No, I mean, it's very good for Newsweek that the Daily Beast is taking it over, and Tina Brown's a good magazine editor, and et cetera, et cetera. What it means for the dying breed of bloggers is an interesting question that we'll see. Mm-hmm. Mainly, I'm hoping she doesn't even notice that I'm here for a while.
Well, I'm not talking.
No, and nobody will look at this. So, but anyway, we'll see what happens. It should be fun.
I've got an idea for you, Mickey. I've got a business model. We're going to talk about WikiLeaks.
Yeah.
This Julian Assange. I mean, he's found a way to make a name for himself, right?
Yeah.
But I don't see why we have to let him have that space all to himself. Have you thought of starting a site called MickeyLeaks?
I actually did think of that stupid pun, yes. I forget what...
Then again, your name's Mickey. I'm kind of proud that my name is Bob, and yet I thought of a pun involving... I forget
what I was going to leak, though. I had something to leak.
You could also have a line of diuretics. Never mind.
Bob.
Look, I'm sorry.
Jesus.
I know, it's beneath us.
You're trying to attract classy advertisers?
Any advertising I can get.
So WikiLeaks, let's talk about that.
Let's do.
The only guy to do the obvious contrarian take, which is that this not only perversely helps the United States, that's been written, but that it's...
Who wrote that, and how does it help us?
Well, John Judas wrote it in a sort of not very perverse way, which is that it helps us by, I think, weaning us away from any imperial ambitions we might have, and makes us more transparent. But it's also pretty obvious that, it's not a bad idea if Iran knows that the king of Saudi Arabia wants to blow them up. It's cut off the head of the snake. There is a tradition of, leaking things that you want your enemies to know. I mean,
and yet it would be counterproductive for you to say them publicly.
Right. It's like, but if you could say, "Oh, that jerk leaked that. I'm so sorry," but you don't deny the truth, then sometimes it's a good way of conveying a message.
Yeah, you could say that about the remarks about Russia. I forget who is quoted as saying it's not a democracy, but Putin took exception to that. Well, it's much better for us to for it to be learned that we think that than for us to actually say it.
Well, I think Gates said that, but Defense Secretary. But the next logical step is the truther step, to say not only did it serve our interests, but we must be behind it. And nobody sane has said that, but Ahmadinejad has embraced
that. Well,
that.
actually, Zbig Brzezinski speculated that foreign agents were behind it because he thinks that some of the things seem so pointed in their, you know, he noted that the Chinese government gets kind of embarrassed, the Arab rulers get embarrassed, but he didn't go beyond that. This was on a PBS interview.
What?
As for us being behind it, I mean, that's just out and out nuts. There's a reason nobody said that, Mickey.
Ahmadinejad said it.
Well, of course, he's going to say it.
Okay, well, he's the only
He doesn't even. He may not even believe it.
I'm waiting for somebody on the left to say it.
I think he may be waiting a while.
Right.
I mean, the interesting thing is that Assange is, has, I think, what could be safely called a leftist critique of America. But the people who are, he sees his mission as serving that, I believe. But the people who seem delighted about all this are the neocons, right?
Well, that's right. I mean, you steered me to a very interesting, long, incredibly long, unbelievably long blog post about Assange's his grand theoretical construct, which is that the United States is a conspiracy, and we have to keep secret from the public what we're really doing, but they have to talk amongst themselves. So they arrange anything you do to throw a monkey wrench in the works will stop the conspiracy. Well, what the leaks reveal is there is no conspiracy. We're actually doing what we said we were doing, and that's why the neocons are happy. The very leak completely disproved the whole basis for this grand theoretical foundation that Assange has, which is that there's some evil plan. I mean, we could think of hundreds of evil plans that are more evil than the plans that these leaks reveal. We don't want Iran to develop a bomb. Hey, we're pursuing that through diplomatic channels. Gee, that's like some horrible evil.
Actually, on the Iran front, there was an interesting thing, and Flint Leverett blogged about this today, which is that it turns out that we were just going through the motions in seeking engagement with Iran, and that all along the plan was to use the assumption was we'd have to resort to sticks and not carrots, and Flint's interpretation, I think a lot of people's of this, is that there was no earnest effort at engagement, and so there was a certain amount of duplicity there. In fact, that's almost the only area I can think of where our words were significantly at odds with our actual thoughts.
But that's sort of a run-of-the-mill thing. Do you really think earnest engagement would have produced results?
Well, I think from Obama, yeah, I think people had that view of Obama. He really wants to reach out, but it turns out that apparently, perhaps because he was under the influence of Dennis Ross, he was never serious. And if you're not serious about engagement, if it's all just a show, just an excuse to move to the next level of sticks and maybe ultimately bombs, then you're not going to make them an offer that they can accept, and that's been a critique from realists like Flint Leverett all along, is that there has been no deal that you would expect Iran to find compelling put on the table.
Well,
yeah,
I'm having brain lock here momentarily.
Could be the overwhelming force of my logic.
No, I don't think that's it.
Threw you for a little setback.
There isn't even any insight that I've seen along the line of Steve Clemens' insight, which is that the Ahmadinejad faction is actually the most reasonable faction, and that the so-called Democratic faction, the Greens, that we're supporting, the people who are for truth, justice, and the Iranian way, are actually the people who are most tenaciously cling to nuclear ambitions. That perversity is absent from the cables, I think.
Well, I think there's two issues. I think either faction is going to want Iran to be able to pursue have a nuclear energy program of the sort that we're now trying to deny them. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be able to bomb, but if the Greens had won, they would not be backing down in a really dramatic way, I think, on this front. That's a fact. I haven't heard people say that they are more militant, that the reformists are more militant about
Clemens has
nukes.
said that, sure.
Well, I mean, there was a moment.
Israeli intelligence.
Well, there was a moment when I know that he reported, and it seems to have been a fact, that the Greens undercut Ahmadinejad. They did move to his right tactically on a particular issue of this sort.
Well,
but I think that was more politics than ideology. Anyway, we're kind of in the weeds.
The point is that that's the sort of thing that might be actually interesting, or reveal that there was some sort of hidden level of reality there that the public wasn't being let in on. And I don't think that, I haven't seen anything that implies that. So we offered them engagement, and they didn't take us up on it. If they'd taken us up on it, they could have, and things would have been different. So it wasn't.
You're missing my point. You're missing my point. We never gave them an offer that was calibrated to be accepted.
What would that offer have been?
Well, I don't know the details. Go read what Flint Leverett has been writing for the last year. But it's out there on paper, and it's articulated very clearly. And it is a fact that Dennis Ross is known to have said in the past, I think both in his public writings and in some conversations that Flint reported, much to Dennis Ross's dismay, and I'll link to the post recounting some of this, that Dennis Ross's view had been, look, the reason you go through the motions of engagement is so that ultimately you can get tough, and maybe it's a prelude to bombing. And then Dennis Ross, for reasons that escape me, reached a position of tremendous influence in this administration, notwithstanding his record of consistent failure in the Middle East to ever get anything accomplished.
I guess I defer to you. I guess I was thinking that it's different to to not pursue some sort of engagement under threat of sanctions versus under threat of bombing. It seems to me you're never going to get a decent engaged agreement unless you use the peaceful levers at your disposal, which are sanctions.
No, I don't think that's true. I think you can argue with whether or not Iran is a rational actor, but the premise of this whole thing, the premise of carrots or sticks, is that they're rational actors. You can have a rational actor that does a deal with you based totally on carrots. Most business, almost all business deals that are done, very few of them involve threats of punitive action. It's like, hey, we'll give you this if you'll give us this. It's just not, and in fact, once you start talking about sticks as well as carrots, it changes the tenor of the conversation in ways that are often not productive. Now, I don't know the details. I don't know whether Flint is right or not, but I don't know the region well enough. But there are a lot of things that he thought should have been put on the table that weren't. And, he was in the Bush administration. I mean, he knows the stuff. He was right there.
Okay, you'll link to him?
I'll link to this blog post today, yeah.
Okay. That'd be useful.
Now, but on the WikiLeaks generally, it's interesting. Assange is... it was a slightly zany spiel, at least judging by the excerpts from it, but it does seem coherent in its own way. I mean, he has a grand theory worked out, which is that, as I understand it, the key is kind of this. He says, the more secretive or unjust an organization is, this is his premise, the more leaks induce fear and paranoia in its leadership and planning coterie. So, the ellipses, and then he says, in a world where leaking is easy, secretive or unjust systems are non-linearly hit relative to open, just systems. In other words, his feeling is that he's not saying that if you throw all the secrets out there, no good cause gets hurt or no good organization gets hurt. It's that the bad organizations, like the United States, get disproportionately hurt.
Right, but I think what he's proven is that the United States is not Enron. In other words, you expose Enron's emails, and Enron is revealed as a horrible, evil organization. You expose our emails, and this wasn't that bad.
Of course, there was a limited level of classification. Our most classified stuff, reflecting the thoughts the candidly expressed thoughts of the real players in the administration are not out there.
Well, but he threatens actually another document dump to reveal them. But
well, he may, but I think there's
but so far he hasn't proved what he so far his theory is misapplied to the United States. And
well, there's another flaw, I think, which is that he's saying that the organizations he's targeting, in effect, are either secretive or unjust, as if it's inherently bad to be secretive. I think that's implied, that secretive organizations deserve to be hit. Well, there are all kinds of legitimate reasons that organizations can be secretive. Certainly in commerce, corporations that are not doing any inherent bad have reason to have secrecy.
Well, but in all honesty, he has to admit that leaking information will hurt the secretive organizations even if they're good. So that's the point I'm making. Yeah, but
that's the point I'm making. He seems to almost be equating secretive with bad, and that's what I'm questioning.
But I don't think he was. He was saying secretive or bad. He was admitting that he screws secretive good organizations too. Maybe not. Otherwise, or he would say.
Yeah, you may be right, but maybe he is not saying that secretive equals bad, in which case he's acknowledging that he's going to hurt maybe a significant number of good organizations.
But, I mean, basically, ultimately that whole spiel of his, and we should definitely link to that, amounted to I'm doing this because I can. And it was a rationalization.
Well, no, come on. I mean, he has this whole rationale that goes well beyond that.
Well, but one always has a whole rationale that goes well beyond it. Every time I've had a bit of secret information and I think, well, gee, is it right to leak this or not right to leak this? I've leaked it because the imperative is always to be active and use, do whatever you can, and you can do it, so you do it. And then you come up with some sort of fancy rationale, and this is one of the fancier ones.
That's an interesting point, is that all he is being, in a sense, is your average journalist on a large scale. I mean, there are journalists who are criticizing him, but the fact is that your average working journalist, in the traditional sense of, person in a newspaper, you give them a secret document, they want to get it out there. They may be stopped by their publisher or something, right, in the end. But the actual journalists, their philosophy is, if there's a story here and it involves a secret document, I'm going with it. And in that sense, he's just being a journalist. He's just better at it, and he's harnessing the latest technology.
Yeah. I mean, yes. I should say there are things that involve, people would kill themselves if this came out that I don't publish.
But he purports to be sensitive to that. He wound up trying to redact some names from the Afghanistan dump. So he at least claims that he's sensitive to that.
The classic example was when Barbara Boxer was running against Bruce Hershenson in her first Senate race, it was very close. She was about to lose, and somebody told me that Hershenson bought porn magazines over at the Centerfold newsstand. And as a good loyal Democrat, I leaked that to the Democratic Party, and they used it against him. And as a result, the monster named Barbara Boxer was born.
And that was the last time you did anything like that.
Well, no, but it was. I mean, it wasn't. When you think about it now, it looks like a pretty sleazy thing to do. Because what's so terrible about reading porn magazines at the Centerfold newsstand? And Bruce Hershenson was a nice man, and he wasn't even that much of a moralistic anti-porn crusader.
That was pretty sleazy on your part, Nick. Yeah, and you didn't even do the journalistic thing of reporting it. You handed it to operatives.
I've admitted it several times in print since, but I did the loyal Democratic thing.
So you were a pawn.
Even loyal Democrats, even now, think it was the right thing to do.
You were a tool. You were a pawn.
But the point is, you always come up with some rationale to leak it.
Well, yeah, but I mean, everyone has ultimately there's some sort of, you keep bringing this up. It's like you said the same thing about Imam Ralph, ultimately it's his ego driving him to build this thing. Well, ego drives the whole world, Mickey. Of course Julian Assange is at some level an egomaniac, and it's working for him, but that's not to say that he doesn't have this formal rationale that can be examined in its own right.
But Bob, you've written a whole book about how Darwinian impulses influence the superstructure of what we produce. So why do I have to take this load of theory all that seriously when I know what really underlies it?
Well, because there are good theories and bad theories, and we should ultimately go with the good ones and discredit the bad ones. There is such thing as logical evaluation of a rationale.
Nor did it seem all that damn brilliant to say, actually, when you think about it, that, gee, more secretive informations are more damage if you reveal their secrets. Duh. I mean, why did I have to read 10,000 words on the web to lauding this brilliant?
Well, but I can almost tell you how that happened. The first draft said the more unjust an organization is, the more damage transparency does, and so this is all great. And somebody pointed out to him, wait a second, there are legitimate organizations that have legitimate needs for secrecy. So he had to put in or secretive, and without acknowledging the extent to which that damages the overall argument.
Well, I think that's right, but I mean, but the way you described it, it's totally a rationale for just releasing everything, and why should we? I mean, you don't have to take it all that seriously. It's, hey, if we release everything, it'll hurt the bad guys more than the good guys. I mean, that's so.
Well, it's an interesting question. I mean, imagine a totally transparent world. And, we might as well imagine something much closer to that, because regardless of what happens to him, fundamentally, he just embodies a technological potential that has begun to exist. If WikiLeaks dies, it will still be the fact that anybody in any organization who finds newsworthy material has a way easier time getting it to the world's attention than 20 years ago.
Right.
And we might as well live with this, and organizations are going to have to adjust, and it's going to, as Dan Dresner pointed out in the Post, it's going to, there's going to be this ironic effect, which is that one reason there was so much data available in a single dump was because after 9/11, when we saw how much information had been compartmentalized, we put a lot of people on the same channel. And so documents were distributed more widely. That's why this was all there in a single dump. And now, as a reaction to this, we're probably going to go back to compartmentalizing information.
Well, also, my standard assumption had been that too many things were labeled secret, and a lot of things that are labeled secret, the bureaucratic tendency is, they were labeled secret even though they were harmless. This seems to go against that. The reaction to this is going to be to label more things secret and give them a higher, higher code, top secret instead of secret, even though, so we're going back in the opposite direction.
That could well be. And there will be some surely technological changes. I mean, it blows my mind that a private first class had access to this.
Why hasn't there been more written about him?
I mean, well, why hasn't there been more written about the question of why a private first class had access to this information
and also,
as a matter of course?
What's going to happen with him? I mean, he does fit the definition of treason, right?
Oh, he's going to the slammer. Big time.
Well, but yes, I understand.
Not Julian Assange, but this private.
I understand private Manning, but
yeah.
if you really think, the potential for damage is greater now than before, and one man can do a lot of damage, that one way to stop that is to really, really punish that one man. Sending him to the slammer would not be enough under this theory.
You're thinking Abu Ghraib?
You'd have to have like a Braveheart level of torture to
and you've been thinking about this, haven't you?
No, I'm just saying, if you really follow the logic through, I mean, but you don't think anyway.
I don't think we're going to torture him.
No, but it's bizarre.
Of course.
It's bizarre that everybody sort of. It's as if these leaks came from nowhere, and they didn't seem to come from nowhere. They came from one guy.
Of course, Sarah Palin is I mean, a lot of conservatives are wanting them to get tough on Assange, which I think, as a legal matter, is just not easy, since he's not an American citizen. And Sarah Palin is why didn't we mount counter cyber warfare? Which just shows, I'm sorry, what an idiot she is.
Well,
I mean, that would have been utterly futile. We would have just looked like fools.
Why would it have been utterly futile? It worked against Iran. Apparently, we really screwed them up with cyber warfare.
No, but look, you don't think he had backup copies, Mickey? I mean, look, the thing you could easily do is a denial of service attack where you try to flood his servers. Well, these documents are so fertile, right? I mean, if they get out they would just spread all over the internet, backup after backup after backup. They keep popping up on additional websites. It's just crazy. I mean, Plus the fact that 4 or 5 news organizations already had copies of the key documents. Anyway.
Okay. Well, what is so terrible about Hillary Clinton spying?
Oh, I think that's terrible.
Explain
first
why.
of all, I think, call me old-fashioned and idealistic, I think, it's like an honor to be the nation that hosts the United Nations, and we should not abuse our access, and I think some of this involved abusing our that access, as I understand it. But secondly, it's just sleazy and cheap. I mean... And why did it only start in 2008 if it's some sort of essential diplomatic function? Why was it that Condi Rice, that we weren't apparently asking senior diplomats to go around scrounging up credit card numbers and, I don't know, stray nasal hairs to get DNA samples or whatever?
I assume it has something to do with the potential for cyber spying. In other words, if we got their credit card numbers and their email handles, we could hack into a bunch of stuff.
No, but we wanted biological information, I think,
I don't understand that.
It's beneath.
But I don't understand what really good it really does. It seems either very, very petty or designed to give these diplomats something to do. It's like make work for diplomats.
Well, yeah, and you see that it had carried some costs in the event of exposure, and of course these days everything can be exposed. So it's just dumb. In addition to being just kind of
the obvious.
Diplomats, you want to get the best diplomats. It's like you can't ask them to do Windows as part of their job,
Well, but if you're the number 3 diplomat at an embassy and you don't have much to do, ferreting out the Social Security numbers of your foreign counterparts would be a good way to...
It debases, I don't know. Maybe I'm naive, but anyway.
The obvious...
I do not agree with Jack Schaefer that she should resign, but I do think she should apologize and say something, and I'm not sure she has.
The obvious...
I think they should announce a change of policy, actually. I do.
The obvious point, which Dick Morris made, unfortunately, before I did, is that she loves to wiretap. She tapped people's cell phones when she was First Lady of Arkansas.
Well, but wait, Mickey. This was a Condi Rice initiative that just did not get changed in Hillary's administration.
No, I understand, but it did not get changed.
Fine. And I don't think we need a grand theory of Hillary so much as we need a grand theory of Condi.
Well, she seems to have reinforced it with a couple of specific emails. Could you get this? Could you get that? She likes to snoop on people, and this was an overlooked nugget in one of the biographies of Hillary during the campaign, was that she personally listened to the wiretapped cell phone conversations of her opponents in Arkansas, and this got hushed up on the grounds that we don't comment on a failed book. Well, but it was still apparently true, and it's something revealing about her mindset at a time when all sorts of people are running around saying, oh, she should be president and not Barack Obama. Well, maybe not.
So you're accusing her of being Nixonian?
Yeah.
Wow. That's quite an allegation, Mickey Kaus.
Well, I don't understand on what level to take your mockery.
I don't either. That was actually aimless mockery. I was thinking about whether it's time to segue.
Yes, it is.
So to what? You want to talk about the budget deficit?
Yeah, it's not clear that I have all that much to say about it, but let's talk about that.
You're against it. I'm against it.
Well, it's weird. Every single plan that's come up, I like. I mean, Bob Schieffer says, well, would you go along with a plan that says this? As if any politician would balk, and sure, why not? It's fine. None of the plans cut that deep. This latest one from the Erskine-Bowles Commission was apparently produced by Bruce Reed, great guy, head of the DLC.
I know Bruce.
And it's a good plan. It avoids the...
Wait, Bruce produced the Bowles
Bruce,
Simpson
I just
thing?
discovered this about half an hour ago. Bruce is the executive director of the damn commission. No wonder it's a reasonable plan. I mean, it doesn't do the two obvious things that would be bad about a plan, which is screw the poor and screw poor retirees. I think it has a special program to make sure that there's a minimum payment in Social Security that is really too low, and you got to increase that. And also, it doesn't increase tax rates at the top, marginal tax rates so high that it brings back unproductive tax shelters. It, in fact, lowers tax rates by broadening the base. So, sure, if I could press a button and do that, I would do it.
Well, wait, but doesn't it include, I mean, first of all, as for the political feasibility, but you're not judging it on that.
No.
It does eliminate the homeowner deduction, right?
I think it limits it to $500,000 on a first home. Fine.
Oh, okay, well, that's not so bad.
Yeah.
I do think, I do think there's actually a case for the homeowner deduction, and I guess it's been made. But,
which is what?
Well, positive externalities. I mean, it's like nobody ever washed a rented car. If you own a home, you do things that are good for the neighborhood at large. You are more concerned about the security of the neighborhood. You're more likely to keep an eye on the neighborhood. You keep your lawn up. Of course, don't get me into my personal lawn care habits, but you take an interest in the welfare of the neighborhood at large.
That all happens, yes.
But the other thing it does is it raises the age at which you get Social Security?
I don't.
This plan?
It raises the age at which you get full Social Security, yes.
Okay, I mean, there is a critique of that, too.
No, there is a critique of that.
And it's a good one. It's a left-wing critique, which is that this discriminates against manual laborers. Blue-collar workers tend to die younger than white-collar workers. So as you raise the age at which the benefits kick in, then, they're more likely to get little or no benefits. And also, it's harder to stay. Retirement gets forced upon you earlier if your job is heavily manual, right? Like strenuous labor.
Well, first, it's hard to say that this benefits the rich if what you do is, tax and sort of means test the benefits of the rich. Although this plan doesn't do that, I understand. There's a right-wing way to counter the left-wing criticism, which is, okay, you don't want to benefit rich people, let's end the benefits of rich people. That's a plan made by this Democratic think tank Third Way that mysteriously hasn't been released yet, but is scheduled to be released soon, which is you don't just tax the benefits of rich retirees, you eliminate the benefits of rich retirees, and that's the way to save really big bucks. And,
so
and
you've got to scoop.
Who cares how long they live? If they're not getting benefits, that's their business, right? So
yeah, I mean, the critique of that has always been that the more people you exclude from the benefits, the more you slowly undermine political support for the program itself.
Well, but the left proposes something that also undermines political support, which is increasing the payroll tax until so there's no upper limit. I mean, the whole idea of the payroll tax is it's a contribution. You're contributing to the program, and you get your money back. So that means that that it's not just a 2% tax on the rich ad infinitum. The rich people pay up to $100,000 or wherever it is, and then they stop paying. They've made their contribution. If you raise that cap, you've also undermined the program. You've turned it into just a general revenue program that people haven't paid into. That argument cuts both ways. I think the system's strong enough it can withstand a whole lot of undermining. It would become not a welfare program because it's work tested. You have to work to get it. It will become earned insurance against poverty and old age. I think people can understand that. They understand that they're paying into a system that will guarantee they will not be poor when they're old. And they will see people around them who are benefiting from the program, and they will not notice that rich people are not benefiting from the program.
Well, I'm in favor of means testing it so that rich people get less in the way of benefits. But as for raising the retirement age, I think that's weird or ill-advised, not just because it disproportionately hurts blue-collar workers, but because we're living in an age where people more and more are finding that their skills are not marketable as they reach late middle age because of the rate of technological change. So,
What, so we just pension off the people who are suppose I committed to an archaic art form like blogging, and blogging becomes obsolete. Nobody wants bloggers anymore.
You read my mind.
Nobody wants bloggers anymore.
Journalists are a good example.
So at age 60, you just put me out to pasture and assume I don't have to work? I have nothing
in your case, I was thinking more glue factory than pasture.
I have nothing to contribute to society. That seems like a very defeatist attitude. What about the wisdom of old people and retraining them into learning new skills?
Okay, let's do that. But anyway, you take my point.
Well, I always thought you could have an exception for people who really had hard manual labor, like coal miners. The problem is that, like all bureaucratic exceptions, it would soon expand to include, half the population. But what percent of the population is engaged in manual labor that's so hard that they're at the age of 60, they're just broken down, exhausted, and they need to be retired. I would say less than 10%.
Oh, wait a second. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. But anyway, they're the ones I'm talking about.
Maybe auto workers. Auto workers, coal miners, people who really bust ass in factories. That's 10%. Farmers, maybe. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But
and illegal aliens, but we'll get to them later. That's just a tease. Can you guess what, from my point of view, would be the most emotionally gratifying measure to reduce the budget deficit that could be taken, say, this month?
This month?
Yeah. It would give me a big thrill, even if it would only make a small dent.
Tax? No, I don't.
No, you were there. You were there.
I was?
End the Bush tax cut for the rich.
But, well, anytime. Why does that give you such gratification?
Well, for a couple of reasons. One of them is just that it would give Obama a chance to show that he's a man. I mean, he lies down and gets rolled over.
What?
I think both this now the START treaty is starting to look like maybe there's a chance they'll pull that out of the fire. But both START and the upper income tax cuts are things where I'd like him to take a stand and throw down the gauntlet, even if he thinks he'll lose. Make the Republicans be seen taking that position.
You don't want to have the tax increases go into effect right now, in the middle of a recession, do you?
I absolutely do, Mickey. I absolutely do.
But that's only because you secretly think the recession is basically over.
Well, I do think it's on the mend, but there's also the fact that, look, we're talking about rich people who, first of all, we're talking about non-huge things. I mean, if you're making $300,000, well, only the last $50,000 of that would be subject to the increase. The increase itself would be, what, 4%? So we're talking like, what are we talking, $2,000? We're not talking about huge amounts except for really, really, really rich people. And what that means is that we're not talking about money that if you return it to them is going to go into consumption. They're not going to buy anything with it. Now, it's true that if they put it in a savings account, it lowers interest rates. But interest rates are not a problem right now, right? You may have noticed interest rates are really, really, really low already. So I just don't see this as being so at odds with ending the recession. Well, the recession's over.
I guess my attitude's a little different. I'm happy. I have no problem with raising taxes on the rich and even raising the rates as far as this small amount would do. I have a problem with if you were raised to 50, 60%, that would be bad. But I want to make sure that sort of that goes for the additions to the welfare state that Obama's made that I like, i.e. health care, and doesn't just go to sort of get that all the fat is wrung out of the system beforehand. And it seems to me that by holding the line on taxes, no tax increases, you sort of force the Democrats to wring the fat out of the system. And then, we know where the rich people live. We can go get their money to pay for health care. But you always worry about doing it prematurely.
So what, you're doing the baby in the bathtub thing?
No, I don't want Democrats to raise taxes on the rich and piss away the money on urban development action grants and pensions for veterans.
Well, Mickey, any form of reducing the deficit, whether it's revenue increase or cost reduction, could in principle be used on some program you don't like. In principle,
well,
you can't go around vetoing everything because in principle that could happen.
That's why I and most taxpayers prefer a two-step system where first we gin up a big budget crisis and we try to wring as much fat out of the system as possible because we say tax increases are anathema, and then when that doesn't work, we raise taxes.
So you don't want to do anything on the revenue increase front at all?
No, I didn't say that.
Well, that follows from your position. You're saying the problem with raising revenue before you've wrung all the fat out, or whatever your metaphor was, is that you won't wring all the fat out.
Right. I get yes, but I mean, I guess, what do I see? I see I guess, yes, that would be my position.
Okay, well, good.
I mean, I've always seen...
So you're against... you are, in an age when everyone agrees the deficit is a looming problem, you are against revenue increases in principle.
I'm for revenue increases ultimately.
Oh, down the road. Oh, I'm in favor of all kinds of sacrifice down the road. I'm going to quit eating chocolate down the road. Let's do it all down the road. That'll help.
Well, I'm for spending cuts immediately. That's sacrifice, Bob.
Not for you, buddy.
What do you mean?
Mickey-related spending is going to get cut?
I qualified for the Earned Income Tax Credit a few years ago. You should. I'm definitely going to qualify this year. I mean, I've earned nothing this year, Bob.
You may again soon if Tina Brown finds out you're working for her.
I'm sure I'll qualify this year. I've earned nothing this year.
Yeah. Man, it's bad. I don't think we should get into too much mutual commiseration, online in front of everybody. But like, how bad is it? No, I mean it is the apocalypse.
You think?
Yeah.
I mean, you're the expert grantsman. If you don't make a living in the for-profit sector, you can always run around to your various foundations, and and they seem to like to.
They're at my beck and call.
They shower you with money.
Let me make a few phone calls, Mickey. I'll get you some money.
You're golden.
Yep.
You advocate a dialogue among the various factions. They love you.
They love me.
And you have that level of spirituality that's like catnip to them.
I've got that market totally cornered. The lucrative God talk market.
Well, the one we should link to this Nick Denton thing. The one encouraging thing about it is I think this guy's going to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
So some actual.
I do want to see that. That should, in principle, be something the blogging heads can harness if it means an increased demand for video content.
Yes. Well, just somebody in.
Because after all, it's not like it's easy for just anybody to create that these days.
Exactly. I think one of his points is it is easy, but
yeah, I know. I was joking.
I understand, but if there is somebody in journalism who actually makes money, that's generally a good thing.
Well, not if it's just making it off of sleazy gossip, not to mention any names that you just mentioned, but you know what I'm saying?
Well, he makes it off of sleazy gossip, but then respectable people get to tag along for the ride, I guess.
Well, that's what I want to do. So I take back what I said about the sleazy gossip.
And the reason it makes money is because people like you provide that patina of respectability that advertisers want. So you have the sleazy gossip, but then we have Bob Wright and his spirituality, and the whole package is like irresistible to advertisers.
Spiritual gossip, that's the corner that isn't taken yet. Spiritual gossip.
There you go. Well,
what is Deepak Chopra doing now?
We settled your hash.
So wait. Where are we?
We haven't talked about the DREAM Act. We can talk about it quickly.
So that's it on deficit, huh? Wait, well, I do have one more, just quick question. What would happen if Obama tried to turn the tax cuts thing into political theater and threw down the gauntlet and said, look, I understand this whole thing was not the fault of people who are rich. It's not all people are rich. It's just that at a time when, national sacrifice, income inequality has been growing, and we got to cut the deficit. They've got to take a little bit more of a hit, and it's an issue of principle with me, and I defy the Republicans, blah, blah, blah. Throw down the gauntlet. What do you think would happen?
Well, they'll get rolled. I mean, they're doing that.
No, they're not. No, they're not.
They're going to pass.
He's doing what he always says, which is something vague, and I'm willing to compromise.
Well, they're planning a show vote in the Senate for a tax increase restricted to people making $1 million or more. They felt $250,000 or more really cut too deeply into the population.
Yeah.
So they're making that show, and then their caucus is they're not united on it. It doesn't matter what Obama says. The Democratic congressional delegation, even the old one, not the one that's been decimated by the midterms, but the old one is undecided on. So he really doesn't have much leverage. And there's a segue into the DREAM Act, because what he's done is they've appointed this negotiating group, okay? Mm-hmm. And there was actually a very knowledgeable a report from CQ this morning about how Obama's goal in this group is not to stop the tax cuts from being preserved, because that's he doesn't have much leverage for that. It's to extract some concession for that. And the concession could be the START Treaty, the concession could be don't ask, don't tell, or the concession could be, we'll go along with this, with preserving these tax cuts if you pass the DREAM Act, this partial amnesty for people who were brought into this country when they were young. So he's going to try to get something for the concession, and the problem is everybody knows he's going to make the concession in the end, so he doesn't really have much leverage.
That's what I mean, because he never plays tough.
He doesn't have the votes, Bob.
Also, he just always rolls over.
Yeah.
I mean,
he also rolls over in advance. He also rolls over in advance, which is weird.
Well,
this federal pay increase being the latest example.
That's what I mean. Although it's a little unfair because he did salvage health care from the jaws
right.
of defeat.
His strategy sort of worked.
In that case,
the rope-a-dope strategy. But
it's my frustration is just that we live in an era of populist rage, and the left can't capture that. There's something wrong.
Well, there's not that much. I'm not sure how much rage there is at people who pay high taxes, but. There's a lot of rage at Wall Street, a specific group of malefactors. Mm-hmm. But people don't dislike people. I wish there were more people making millions of dollars in my neighborhood. That would mean the economy was perking up.
The people always say that about America. Americans don't begrudge rich people their money because they believe it was fairly earned and so on.
Well, if they believe it was fairly earned,
they say
I don't always say that. I just happened to lapse into it a few seconds ago. But I have another point, which is Obama has no leverage when it comes to income taxes, but he has huge leverage when it comes to estate taxes. In other words, everybody forgets that on January 1st, the estate tax is going to jump up to 55% from zero.
From zero? Oh, did Bush do a moratorium?
No, it expired this year.
Oh.
This is the kill your parents year. This is when
this was the year to die.
This is the year to die.
Well, it's not too late. We got a month, right?
Thanks, Bob. Yes. Although there's no point in me dying since I have no money. But if Obama goes to the Republicans and says, "Look, we will give you a huge decrease in the estate tax, or even we will agree to continue with no estate tax for another year," that's a big thing that Republicans, in theory, want, and that they would be willing to give up something for. And I'm terrified of that. I'm terrified that they'll say, okay, no estate tax, and we'll give you the DREAM Act. That would be really bad from my point of view.
Why don't we remind people what exactly the DREAM Act is?
The DREAM Act is the most appealing group of illegal immigrants, which are people who were brought here by their parents when they were under the bill. It says under the age of 16, so 15 and under, and they in theory,
they graduated from high school or required an equivalency degree.
They have to at some point graduate from high school. They have to have lived here for 5 years, and at some point they have to graduate from high school and then go to
and further be either accepted by a college or join the military.
Be accepted by a college. If it can be a fly-by-night community college.
Okay.
And they have to go for 2 years. They don't have to graduate. So. It's pretty broadly drawn, but it's the most appealing group. And the problem is, even if you let in this appealing group, it still creates a long-term incentive for other people to bring their kids to the United States in the future.
I just think you're wrong about that.
Why?
Well, because anybody who comes over the border tomorrow doesn't qualify for it.
They qualify for the next one.
No. But
there are two problems. There are virtually no barriers against fraud in this, so you can claim that you came earlier, even if you come over tomorrow.
Well, let's leave fraud aside. Anything is in principle subject to fraud.
Fraud, no, it's bigger here because they prevent you from being prosecuted for fraud, and they say that any lie you tell in pursuing this amnesty can't be held against you. Usually, we have a deterrent against fraud, which is if you lie, we prosecute you. Here, it's basically saying you have a free shot.
But, Mickey, anybody who's really been in this country for 5 years, even an illegal, is going to have some documentary evidence of that in some sense. Letters that were sent to them, at an address 2 years ago or something.
You don't need much.
Well, anyway.
Apparently fraud is rampant. And the second thing is, of course, every amnesty is is followed by another amnesty. We had an amnesty in '86. People came in hoping for the next amnesty. Sure enough, Democrats are lobbying to create this next amnesty.
Wait, so you mean there hasn't been a new amnesty since '86?
There have been a bunch of little amnesties. There hasn't been a new big amnesty.
Well, that's been a quarter of a century, so they don't exactly follow on one another as day follows night.
Well, no, they've gotten to live here and work here and earn money here, which is more than they were making back home. And the Democrats constantly tell them they're about to get an amnesty.
Here is the problem with your nightmare scenario, I think. It's like it would be one thing if this thing said, okay, everybody who is here now is safe. But not somebody who comes tomorrow. If the bill said that, okay, then I can imagine kind of how people in Mexico would be thinking, well, everybody I know in America is now safe, so there's like, I'm just going to do what they'll do and I'll be safe.
Right.
But this bill doesn't say that. It says you have to have already lived here 5 years. Not only that, but as we move forward in time, that doesn't change. In other words, you have to have lived here since 2005, and 2, 3, 4 years from now, it will still be the case that you have to have lived here from since 2005. So, people in Mexico, they know it's true that they're in touch with people in America. They're getting information about what's going on, and the information they're going to get is, I know somebody went there 3 years ago to America, and they're not eligible for this.
Well, I'm not sure that that's how the law works. I think it
absolutely works like that. There's a good Will Wilkinson post clarifying this.
I think you have to be here on the date that the law passes, and then you have to have lived here for 5 years after that. I don't think you have to have come here in 2005.
I am pretty sure.
Either way, the kids who come here and then qualify can then turn around and legalize their parents. So all you have to do is think, well, gee, my brother took his kid across the border, and now he's not only is the kid okay, but he's okay too, because the kid was legal, turned around and legalized the father who brought him in.
Wait, I have a reply to that. I have a response to that. First of all, Mickey, I'm reading from a summary of the bill to clarify the earlier point. It says, must have been present in the United States for at least 5 consecutive years prior to the enactment of the bill. Okay? Okay, and B...
Where is this from?
This is probably from a Will Wilkinson post on The Economist. And B, they cannot turn around and get get citizenship for their parents until they themselves are citizens, and that's going to take at least another 5 years.
Well, sure, Bob, and everybody knows that during this process of 5 years, the parents aren't going to be deported. So the parents just sit around for 5 years, and then they become legal. That's a good deal. Everybody in Mexico will see that their buddies who went there got this good deal, and they have every reason to suspect that if they do the same thing, they will get the good deal too.
As I just pointed out, they're not going to see that all their buddies got the deal. They're going to see that all their buddies who went to America within the last 5 years are excluded explicitly from the deal with no hope of that changing under this law.
Of course there's hope of it changing, and as soon as the bill is passed, there'll be another lobbying effort for the next generation of kids who came here. You think a kid who came 3 years ago through no fault of his own isn't an appealing case? He's just as appealing as the current DREAM Act people. So there'll be another effort to let them in.
Maybe an effort, but by your own admission, the only way this thing could squeak through the legislation is through some arcane deal-making. It's hardly a sure thing. The idea that we're definitely, given the fact that attitudes toward immigration have been getting more and more negative, the idea that it's automatic, that we'll see another one of these in 10 years.
Well, that's why I'm happy that the immigration thing is getting more negative, because they're starting to send the message to Latin America.
Well, fine, but it undermines your fear. The fear that you're using to oppose this.
Well, right, but if we go your way and enact it, then it will reverse the message and send the opposite message, which it will say that the pro-immigration forces are in control.
Well, no, but in your view, this is such bad legislation that it will create more anti-immigration sentiment when people see how it works.
There's some people who argue that We'll give them this exception now, and that'll kill the possibility of a broader exception. I don't buy that. It seems to me you don't want to allow any exceptions. Look, I had an argument with a guy on Twitter. This was like a Latino guy responded to one of my posts, I said, look, the problem is it creates, it creates more of an incentive for illegal immigrants to come here. And he said, well, but we don't want a fence. I understand there's a gang problem. And I said, no, it's not just gangs. We have a problem with illegal immigrants who are not gang members. And his response was no mames, which is like, who can deal with this guy?
What was the term?
No mames, M-A-M-E-S. You can Google it up. But anyway, the point is, he and the people behind it have no comprehension that there's anything wrong with coming into the country illegally if you're not a gang member. Mm-hmm. They don't recognize that there's a border there. We have to somehow get across the message that there is a border there. Like every other country in the world, as Greg Gutfeld said, we would just like a border. And that's the mentality we're fighting. And giving ground on this is not going to destroy that mentality. It's going to encourage the mentality.
I would repeat that the fact that nobody who moved here after 2005 is eligible for this sends pretty clearly the signal to people that coming across the border now is far from guaranteed to getting you amnesty.
In 86, we said nobody who comes after 86 can get amnesty, and sure enough, we're about to give them amnesty. So I don't know if there's always
24 years later.
There's always some technical requirement that people realize that if they're now living in Mexico, they're not going to qualify under the amnesty law, but that doesn't stop it from being an incentive. I don't understand what the 2005 versus 2010
the other two things I'd say is, if you look at the requirements for this, it does sound like the kind of people, if they graduate from high school, they'll be fluent in English. It sounds like a bunch of people you'd be kind of happy to have in your country, right?
Well,
yes, there's not all that many of them who would qualify. And
yes, even people on the right like Mark Hakorian have said, look, if you narrowly tailored this to really hit the people we like, there's a small number of the people, and you could accompany it with the enforcement measures that would prevent, future. Make it harder for future illegals to come in. He could go with that deal. That's not the deal that's before Congress now.
As you know, I am personally happy with more robust border enforcement. You maintain that the walls actually work, right?
They seem to. The reason they're going across the border in Arizona is because California is basically walled off.
Well, it seems like if that's true, wouldn't you, if you just incrementally built more and more wall, and then that would give you less and less space you had to actively police, so you could concentrate your resources more heavily on the open spaces, I would think that it would become manifest that that was working, right? Long before you finished the entire wall is what I mean.
It's already manifest that it's working.
Well, then why aren't we doing more of it?
Because people don't want a border there. They don't want it to work. They're not worried that it won't work and it's a waste of money. They're worried that it will work and it's been proven to work.
I'm surprised that politically there isn't that kind of deal-making with Dream.
I'm worried about that kind of deal-making because, a fence works. It doesn't solve all the problem.
What problems?
The problem of illegal immigration.
So fences don't work entirely?
Well, because there are people come here by overstaying visas. And people can get around fences. It's hard, but it's possible.
It seems like that would keep it to a pretty manageable scale. The other thing is that the economic downturn has radically cut down on the number of people coming over, right?
Well, but the economic downturn is ending, as we discussed. So they're
not
going to be trying to come back in soon enough.
Good time to build a wall.
If you want to come out for a wall, feel free. I'm for a wall, too. The point is that the right wing is very easily bought off with a wall. And that's a danger. There's a danger in overemphasizing the wall, I think.
So and the reason that deal can't happen is because of what politically? What is it that the Latinos pressure the Democrats not to do it, or what?
Yeah, it's all the Latinos are so offended by a wall, and it's so based on ethnic solidarity.
There is that thing I don't like about it.
They cannot stomach a wall.
I do very much dislike the symbolism.
Well,
I'm in principle happy with robust border enforcement. I've got to say I don't love the look of a wall.
I don't love the look of a wall either, but I don't think anybody does. But they have a point, which is a wall that seems to be targeted specifically at Latinos and not at Indians and Irish and Canadians and other people who might sneak in.
I would support a wall around Ireland and India.
The wall seems...
That could be part of the deal.
You know, and so a wall sort of disproportionately pisses them off.
Understandably.
It's interesting. People like Tamara Jacoby, who has some sort of neoconservative leanings but is for amnesty, are now lamenting the fact that, gee, the drive for amnesty seems to be driven by identity politics. Well, you know, when did she suddenly discover that? Of course it's driven by identity politics. That's the problem. That's why it won't work, because the next amnesty wave, the next drive for amnesty after this one, will also be driven by identity politics.
Okay.
Anyway.
Another 24 years from now. Well, speaking of the passage of time, Mickey, an hour has passed.
But during this 24 years, the people who came here illegally have not been deported in large numbers. They haven't been punished. They've been here living in the shadows, earning a living. It's not a deterrent that there hasn't been an amnesty, because nobody has kicked them out. So of course it's a lure. The 24 years doesn't matter. It's 24 years of living peaceably in the shadows, earning a living in America. That's not so bad if you're a peasant in Mexico.
Yeah, well, I haven't noticed a lot of deleterious effects in America, but I guess you have.
We're not worried about... Well, first there are all these studies that say, well, it doesn't hurt anybody except those at the bottom. Well, that's a big exception. Those at the bottom are the people who've been hurt most by globalization. So yes, Bob, you are not an unskilled manual laborer, so you haven't felt the effect. I guarantee you, if you were working construction, you would have felt the effects.
No, that's a valid point.
Secondly, we're not worried about the current 11 million. We're worried about the next 11 million and the next 11 million. So even though we don't feel the effects now, if we had open borders, you would feel the effects.
I support robust border enforcement, Mickey.
So you don't support open borders?
No, I don't support. You mean truly open borders?
Yeah.
Anybody can come?
Yep.
No, I don't. I mean, I recognize that, there are very, very abrupt migrational shifts, and, can be very disruptive. No, I mean, just as a matter of principle, I can see how it would not always be good for every nation to let anyone from any country in at all times.
Well, I'll take that. Well, it seems to me that then if you have...
That's not so radical. There are lots of people on the left who would say that.
Right, but they then duck out of the implication of that, which is you got to draw the line somewhere, or else you wind up with open borders. This guy I was debating with on Twitter, he is for open borders. He didn't understand why I would want to stop a law-abiding Mexican who is only coming here to work from crossing the border and working here. Mm-hmm. And if that's what you think, then you're for open borders.
No, I mean, assimilation takes time. It can only happen so fast.
Well, I'm not sure it's not just assimilation. You have to wait for their countries to develop enough so that we don't wind up with Rio de Janeiro and Los Angeles. I mean, that's the fear, is that LA would look like Rio de Janeiro and there'd be huge class disparities. And yes, Bill Kristol would have, very cheap servants to bring him his sherry in the library. But, if you were an unskilled American, you'd be totally screwed.
Well, I mean, that's an example of a transition that I think can only, should not be too abrupt.
But I don't understand why delaying it makes it any better, unless the argument is...
Delaying what?
If the idea is to raise wages at the bottom, how does saying, well, we'll only let in the mass of unskilled workers in 20 years, so your wage is going to go down to 10 cents an hour in 20 years, how does that...
It gives people time to adjust. It gives people time to, just softens the blow. Gives them time to.
Somebody is not that good at book learning. Is not going to get an education. He or she is an unskilled laborer. How are they going to adjust? Are they going to buy an extra bit of RAM that's going to give them?
Well, look, if you only reduce the number of people who face that plight, you've accomplished something.
Which gives us time to send as many people to school as possible.
Well, but you also, the other thing that happens is, you get upward mobility involving the immigrants. So you get more people at the high end paying for services for manual laborers. I mean, a lot of things happen, but like I said 5 minutes ago, we were past the hour mark. I don't know how long this should go on.
Okay.
But
you're like Roberto Duran. No mas.
No,
I have you on the
happy
ropes.
to talk about it forever.
I have you on the ropes, and you now all of a sudden want to end it. Okay.
No, you don't have me. I mean, look, we're what you're now asking. In a way, you're challenging me. You're asking why am I not for open borders, which is a weird line of inquiry since you are emphatically not. You know, it seems to me your position is that it has to be binary. You have to either agree with Mickey and be afraid of all immigration, or be an open borders person, and I'm just saying no, you don't. You can be me.
No, I accept. All I'd say is all the reasons we're against open borders are the reasons why we want some border, and then you have to draw the line somewhere. I didn't understand your argument that all we're trying to do is delay the inevitable transition to Rio de Janeiro.
It's not a question of delay. I mean, it's a question of slowing things down. Look, there are velocities beyond which certain processes can lead to upheaval, right? You know, that's what I will say in the abstract.
I'm not talking about upheaval. I'm talking about.
I mean, if you had quintupled the rate of Italian immigration 100 years ago, it might well be something very bad would have happened just because the country couldn't adapt that fast. But the way it worked out, the pace was okay. There's just such a thing as a moderate pace that doesn't lead to upheaval, and a pace that's too fast. I don't see why you can't, accept the position that in principle you could adopt the middle ground on this issue.
But I just don't understand your middle ground. I don't understand how an unskilled worker from the ghetto here adapts.
Well, okay, here's an example, Mickey. Here's an example.
Immigration.
Let me put it this way.
Is by dying.
Let me put it to you this way. Among the forms of upheaval, if you sent immigrants across the border at 7 times the velocity they've been coming, you would get more of a nativist backlash, which, whether it's rational or irrational, can be really, really nasty. You start getting the vigilantes going around killing Hispanics and stuff, okay?
Right.
It takes people time to adjust to change, Mickey. In all kinds of dimensions, it takes time.
But
there's such a thing as changes too fast. I don't get why you can't wrap your mind around this. I really don't.
No, I understand that, but
What is your position? You have to be for either open borders or agree with Mickey. Is that your position?
No, I just don't understand how time solves the problem of an unskilled laborer who's competing against foreign wages. How does he adapt? He doesn't
because
adapt.
There never are a whole bunch of them competing. That's it. Never, ever, ever. Because what happens over time is that whether you believe it's going to happen or not, you see upward social mobility, and more of the second and third generation Hispanics are not doing gardening work.
I'm not talking about the Hispanics. I'm talking about Americans. And if you worry about the development of a caste system along, Charles Murray Hearst lines, you worry
about the
that
Caucasian
upward
Americans,
mobility might
Mickey.
at some point stop.
Mickey, if you're really worried about the Caucasian Americans, it's not a caste system that you're imagining, because it's not an ethnically based socioeconomic segregation. Make up your mind.
It's not ethnically based. It's
well, that's what we mean by caste system.
Okay, well then I'm using the wrong word. Anyway.
Well, you finally succeeded in getting me to get upset.
I'm not saying there's no middle ground. I'm saying that I don't understand your middle ground.
Okay.
Okay. If I've gotten you upset, then I'll declare victory.
I disagree with your incomprehension of my middle ground, but I will defend to the death your right to hold it.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Later.